there ain't no stopping us. Fly without boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get to glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shoot.
Okay, hello everyone. Let me make sure my sound levels are good. 1 second here. I need to learn the shortcuts for all of these little controls I have. Okay, those are good. How are you all doing? Remember, as always, this is a participatory program. I have a ton of clips, and I know it seems like I always go through the same people, which I tend to do. I do tend to watch a lot of Dave Smith, Michael Mouse, and, funny enough, Ben Shapiro. Though I've recently added Tim Pool to the rotation, though I haven't really found anything to clip out. But all of and I think there might even be some Tim Pool in here. But all of these clips, except for the Ben Shapiro, have in common is they're dealing with the current Libertarian Party tea, as it were. But they're all excellent programs and a lot of good stuff to talk about. I'm not sure how much of it we're going to get to. I am going to testify tonight at a town council hearing that maybe I'll talk about later. But before we get to that, as usual, along the bottom here is my Patreon. If you enjoy the type of content that I do, which I do think is somewhat unusual, being particularly Libertarian Party focused. There's a lot of liberty stuff. Well, not even a lot. Not enough as far as I'm concerned. But very, very little that is from a Libertarian Party lens. Please consider becoming a patron. It is so appreciated. I'm very close to a big milestone in support, and if you could help me get to that milestone this month, it would be greatly appreciated. I'm about $40 a month away from that milestone, so I would truly appreciate it. Let's get that off the screen now, as it is distracting, and let's get right into the content, shall we? And this is, of course, a Get Ready With Me, so I'm going to be putting on my face for this evening. Let me find my little buttons here. Here we go. I think Ben Shapiro is up first.
Is that the states are coming apart. We have two separate countries, and they are becoming more red and more blue, respectively, over time. And that is why federal politics are so unbelievably unworkable right now, because there is just a different set of priorities on each side of the ledger. Now, normally, the solution to that, if you wish to maintain a country, would be to have a small federal government whose job it is to basically enforce only the most important and rudimentary of individual rights. It would not be the job of the federal government to get involved in each and every decision in your life, because obviously California lives differently than Florida. Instead, the blue states will not allow that to happen. The blue states wish to cram down their lifestyle on the red states. Understand that we are living in a time of rising authoritarianism, and the great authoritarian threat is not relegated solely to the extreme right. In fact, it has taken over the mainstream left. The mainstream left would love to control the lives of the people who live under its auspices. They would love to control the federal government and cram down those federal standards on states that disagree with them. And decentralization and federalism would be an excellent solution to this, but the left will not abide that. So look at California and understand that if you live in a red state, it's not just that California wants to separate off from you. It's that California wishes you to live as they live. California is not merely saying we don't want to do business with the state of Florida, for example. California is saying we also would love to run the federal government and make sure that Florida cannot act like Florida acts.
Okay, putting on my primer here. On these points, Ben Shapiro is absolutely correct. It's the traditional conservative view, which is also the classical liberal view, and he's right on that. That if there is to be a government and a nation, that the government should be very, very small and limited to the protection of rights of others. What is going on right now, and the backdrop of what he's talking about, is California saying they won't send anyone to do state business to states that have policies they don't agree with. And that is horrifying. That is, I'm going to analogize it to the Libertarian Party, like national or another state interfering with the autonomy of another state. It's not California's business. Fuck you, California. Now I'm definitely not getting monetized. So, super chats welcome, because I couldn't keep my mouth shut from cuss words, I guess, for even the first 5 minutes, as is recommended. But it's not their job to be policing the other states. I just can't even imagine the imperiousness, the haughtiness to do that. But what they're doing is treating the collective as it is the individual. And let me explain. For instance, if a business or even a state is doing something you don't like as an individual, it is perfectly within your rights to then boycott or refuse to do business or refuse to associate with. But that's not the job of the government, be it a state government, a local government, whatever it might be. That's the job of individual private citizens, not entities with the power of the justified use of force behind them. That is such a gross abuse of power. And it's just unbelievable to me that states think they have the right to do that. So Ben Shapiro, on that point, is absolutely right. I'm going over here, looking at comments. I have a comment screen here in case you guys are wondering. And I see Fubadu saying, I don't think this is red pilling of conservatives. I think this is, and I have my widget here so that everyone can see comments. Let me pull that up. It's probably not going to show the old comments, but it will show new ones. And that means I need to move back a little here. Okay. This is traditional conservative thought. But the fact is, conservatives really aren't conservatives anymore. In some respects, Ben Shapiro very much is, but the Republican Party certainly isn't, in my view. And I don't care who says truth. Ben Shapiro, Bosch, I don't care. But yeah, this strong-arming of other states, it's a complete undermining of the republic, as it were. But isn't that the nature of politics? And Michael Malice said this in the last show I dealt with, where he said political unity is oppression. Because you wouldn't need politics to achieve unity if people would do it voluntarily. The only time you need politics to do it is when you need to force other people to comply. And this is, right now, behold, the brute force of the state in all of its horror. Next one.
I saw yesterday that there are a lot of people on the left who are bizarrely surprised at the fact that Clarence Thomas, the most conservative justice on the Supreme Court, had made statements about how the federal government really should not be in the business of regulating marijuana. I'm not sure why they're so surprised by that. That's been Clarence Thomas's position for quite a while. I'm not sure why there are so many people surprised by this. National Review has been in favor of decriminalizing marijuana use for decades at this point. Why? Because if you are on the right, one of the things that you rely upon to maintain the ability to live a liberty-driven lifestyle is more libertarian perspective on government.
Okay, well, at least he's admitting it's a libertarian perspective on government and not a conservative perspective on government. But people are surprised because it's so I'm really trying to clean up my language, folks. You need to help me. Because it's so flippin' arbitrary. Oh, so, and I'm one of those people who actually do save all those like samples from Mac and use them. So that's what I'm opening up a sample here. And I'm going to use that for my foundation because I'm such a cheapskate because makeup is so expensive. But it's so arbitrary. People are surprised because they see the hypocrisy. Why just pot? Why isn't Clarence Thomas and other quote-unquote conservatives in favor of no drug laws? How is it your business what anyone else puts in their body? How dare you? Just like how is it? It's so funny that people like Ben Shapiro, and perhaps I'm being unfair to him, so let me just say the typical conservative, don't see the disconnect where they would be, and I need to put the chat window back up. I'm going to need to do that afresh with each time I flip screens. They see the hypocrisy. For instance, Ben was just railing against California minding, I think it was Florida's business, but I think it was one of the Carolinas as well. And saying, how is it California's business? How that other state conducts itself. It's that citizen's business. But we see the same hypocrisy. How is it your business? If I, for instance, wanted to shoot up heroin, what gives you the right to say you get to put me in a cage or put in a cage a willing seller of said substances to willing buyers? You really don't have much of a leg to stand on to criticize, say, California, because you're just as much authoritarian in other areas that you don't particularly approve of. They may think the most important issue is, say, bathroom laws. I don't know what it is that they were boycotting the Carolinas or Florida or whatever about, but let's just say it was that. Well, that's their thing. And your thing may be, well, we can't have free people putting things in their bodies that we don't like. And you're willing to use the force of state for that. Until you're willing to give all that up, me, as an actual libertarian, call hypocrisy and think that you can sit there and be all lathered up about California, but you really don't have any leg to stand on because you're inconsistent. And again, this isn't directly to Ben, because I think Ben might be a little bit more consistent on, say, drug laws than other conservatives, but just speaking of conservatives in general. And Joe Bowers says, and thank you, I'm going to put this up on the screen since, if I can find my cursor. Well, I can't find it, and I don't like keeping you guys waiting. So Joe Bauer says, sent my 20-year-old son some of your content, and he's pretty stoked on you. LOL, this is the good stuff. Thank you. Let's continue here. And I managed to get through that segment without cussing. Yay.
They are the left's radicalism and deep willingness to renormalize institutions, to weaponize against people they don't like, is going to result in a backlash that is going to be far uglier than what the left thinks is going to happen next. And this is completely reversed. The left's case in the 1960s is that these evil right-wing theocrats wanted to control what you did in your bedroom and what kind of drugs you took and how you lived your life. Okay, the people who are now interested in controlling every aspect of your life, how your workplace is, whom you associate with, what kind of church you go to, how your children are raised, whether you ought to be a parent or not. These people exist on the left, and they wish to cram down that vision on everybody else. And the more they cram it down, again, I keep saying it, but it's real, the harsher the blowback's going to be. The response is not going to be the classically liberal response of everybody go his own way, wave your fist unless you hit somebody else in the face. The response is going to be, if you insist on grabbing that gun, I will grab the gun from you and I will use it against you. That will be the response, and it will be quite ugly.
Okay, he's absolutely right. And let me, I'm putting on my, and Wayne's home. Wayne's World, party time. So he'll be interrupting me soon. Put back up the chat widget. And I'm putting on my contour if you're wondering what these dots are. He's right and he's wrong. He's acting as if everything was just perfect until the left came along and started turning authoritarian, and now they're going to have a backlash that they just have no idea what this backlash is going to be like. It's going to be far worse than the classical liberal response that he's acting like the past used to be. Ooh, that's a little bit too dark. But why did the left, why is there, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, but this authoritarianism of the left, he acts like it came out of the ether. But the fact is, the left is giving as good as they got. Because the right used to be, and in still some ways, quite authoritarian with the way they were controlling people's social behavior. I mean, anti-sodomy laws, anyone? Denying gay people the right to marry, anyone? Those are staples of the right. And a lot of what the left is doing is in reaction to what the right previously did. So he's sitting here arguing that the left is going to get a shocker in the blowback, but what is going on with the left is a blowback to what the right already did. And you could probably go turtles all the way down. You know, who was the original aggressor? Who knows? I think the minute you started using government, you can go back thousands of years, that's constantly what it's been used for, to oppress other people. But he acts like this left totalitarianism is out of the void, and it's not. That in itself was a reaction to right totalitarianism. And then, yes, it's going to, the pendulum's going to swing the other way. And he doesn't, he recognizes this sometimes, but in an earlier episode where he talked about why it's important for conservatives to engage in the culture war, he said this is why. Because the power of government is going to be used in a certain way, and he basically was implying, then we better use it for our way, rather than advocating the libertarian solution of just getting the government out of it entirely. Because otherwise, this constant seesawing is inevitable. And he's right, though. The blowback is going to be bad. And then the blowback to that is going to be bad until we eventually just end up in hellhole, unless we start pursuing actual liberty. Actual liberty is the only answer here. It's quite obvious. And Xena is whining because Wayne's home. If you hear a dog whining in the background. Now I think we're getting to the Dave Smith content and the more Libertarian Party specific content. I believe that was all I had for the Ben Shapiro. And, okay, yeah, let's continue.
So there was another situation that you and I discussed last time you were on the show, which is there was kind of a coup attempt in the New Hampshire Libertarian Party that was resolved in favor of the rules and who had been the Libertarian Party prior as a consequence of this situation. And I'm sure in part due to me blowing it up on Tim Pool's show, Timcast, the following day, the current chairman of the Libertarian Party, or let's suppose it's within 3 days, I don't remember exactly, Joe Bishop Henchman resigned as head of the LNC without a replacement in place and blocked me, even though we've never interacted. So there's a few of them who blocked me because they have no idea what else to do. And I think they're boomer enough to think that if you block someone, or I mean, that they can't see your feed, all you have to do is open up a private window, as if I'm going to the walls anyway. There also was a move of retaliation, or at least that's how I perceived it, to strike the current secretary, Ms. Harlos, from the LNC proper. And that was going forward because she was the one who kind of exposed all the antics that they were pulling.
Yeah.
Do you know what the latest is with that?
Yeah, so that failed as well. So it's unbelievable how this thing all worked out. And just to be clear, there was kind of a 3-prong attack that made it all fall apart. But Karen Ann Harlos played a very crucial role in all of that. So Karen Ann Harlos is not a Mises Caucus member. In fact, she's been critical of us in the past, and of me personally. But she was always critical in a reasonable way. Like she wouldn't be hysterical about it. Like she'd say things like, what people were, would be like, oh, Dave's an awful alt-right entryist because he had, Nick Fuentes on his show. And she'd go, yeah, to be honest, I don't think he should have had him on his show. She go, I don't think there's any use in talking to those people, but whatever, it's Dave's show. He can have what he wants on, but I don't think he should have done it. Like a criticism would be like that, the way a normal person would disagree with you, not like screeching that you're this awful person because you talk to someone I don't like.
Well, the question is this: if you are this awful person, why are they talking to you?
Right.
Like it's like infinite regress. I don't get it.
Yeah, the thing that I've really never understood about which to their credit, a lot of them have left and quit the Libertarian Party after this whole thing fell apart. I'd say that, a bunch of them. Andy Craig quit the Libertarian Party. A bunch of them have left. And I give them credit for that. I think that is the right thing to do if they believe the ridiculous shit that they believe. But if you think about this, right? If you believe, forget even the Libertarian Party. If you thought the greater movement of anarchist liberty people, like the whole realm that we're in, if you thought that I was like a Nazi sympathizer, and of course Tom Woods is this awful bigoted League of the South, like horrible person, and of course you are like good friends with both of us, and so you're in that category too. Eric July is also problematic and racist, whatever their worldview is. Ron Paul was a racist. Lou Rockwell is basically a neo-Nazi. Like, go down the list. At what point do you go, I shouldn't be in this movement anymore? Like, at what point, if all of the figures, that have big followings within this movement are all terrible people, then yeah, probably. I certainly wouldn't be a part of a movement if I thought that about all the people involved in it. So, you see a lot of them leaving. I get that. But anyway, to Karen Ann Harlos, so she, immediately, she's on the LNC, and she's just objective and has some integrity. So as soon as she saw this happening, she was like, whoa, this is crazy. And she got recorded interviews with everybody involved. And this was huge because
when did this happen?
This happened right away. Now, Joe Bishop Henchman wouldn't do it. He was smart enough for that. But the state chairwoman sat down and answered questions.
With Gilletta Jarvis?
Yes, Gilletta Jarvis answered questions. And her explanation completely contradicted what Joe Bishop Henchman said in the meeting, which is that he knew about the plan. He signed the letter with the intention for the plan. This wasn't even her idea. Other people told her to do it. And so that happened. Then there was a massive public pressure campaign, which I was really going crazy on Twitter. And then when you did the Tim Pool video, it was like, the fact that Tim put the clip out on his YouTube channel, like they were just being swarmed with people. And then Josh Smith, who's a great dude, who's also, he's an at-large, also on the LNC. He put a motion forward to release all of the correspondence between Joe Bishop Henchman and Gilletta Jarvis. And Joe Bishop Henchman resigned like an hour later. Like he was like, whoop, no. And then he said the reason he was resigning is because he couldn't tolerate the bigotry in the party. Like all this bigotry. As soon as we needed to release the transcripts, all this bigotry, all that. Last week, the bigotry wasn't so bad, but all of a sudden I can't deal with all this bigotry now that you guys want to see my emails, and just left. And on the way out, he passed a motion to clearly out of revenge to kick Karen Ann Harlos out of her position as the treasury. And so they passed this motion. Him and one other guy voted yes on it, and then they both resigned. Then the motion got declared by the vice chair who took over as chair as out of order because they didn't follow the procedures. So they passed the motion got declared out of order, and they had already resigned. So they didn't have the votes to kick her out anymore. So the coup attempt failed, that attempt failed, they all resigned, and then a whole bunch of the loser brigade just started quitting the Libertarian Party. It was a huge step forward in the Mises Caucus Libertarian Party dominance.
Okay, let me put that. Next time I'll have the widget come up automatically. I messed that up. Now, that's how outsiders, well, he's not exactly an outsider, I mean, he's an LP member, but outsiders to the LNC, and I'm sorry I keep bumping the mic. I'll try not to do that in the future as well, and I'm going to go back to comments. That's how the outsiders from the LNC see it, because that's exactly how it is. Retaliation against a whistleblower and complete vindictiveness, and the fact that I did those interviews is what started the ball rolling. He had a few things incorrect. I know in another show, like he had said, because Francis went and Bishop Henchman resigned, that their votes, if that ballot had gone forward, their votes wouldn't count. That's not correct. They just didn't know parliamentary procedure in that. And also, he had the timing a little wrong. It wasn't within an hour of Joshua Smith's motion to release the emails. I think it was the next day. And it was actually a two-pronged thing. I believe Joshua Smith's motion was instrumental. And the funny thing is, I didn't even see that motion till after, because we had so many emails, until after Joe Bishop Henchman had resigned, because I would have immediately co-sponsored it, but I didn't see it. But what I did do, and this was the boom boom to Bishop Henchman that caused him to resign, is the next day I asked him pointedly, who asked you for that letter for New Hampshire? It wasn't Gilletta Jarvis. Who asked you? And that's when he threatened to sue me, and within a few hours he resigned. So it was the two-prong of both Joshua and I pressing the issue. He knew was the truth was, in fact, coming out. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am. All of a sudden, like thrilled and not thrilled. Like, I would be more thrilled to be the subject of conversation for something a little less controversial and certainly less personally painful, but to be spoken of with respect by people I obviously respect, that is, in fact, quite a thrill. So let me go over and take a look at comments here. Yeah, JJ says, not a perfect description of the process, but essentially accurate. Pretty good for people who weren't living it. You know, when you're dealing with outsiders, that's actually a pretty decent description of the process. And yeah, Joe Bowers, yeah, everyone wants power over other people. And Foodaboo, whatever, doody-doo-doo-boo. I hope, Rob Luther, this isn't pausing for everyone. You never know how the internet's going to be. Actually, it wasn't Nick that asked for that letter. It was somebody out of state who has since resigned the party. We don't know the name of the person yet. I know people like to think Nick was the puppet master. He was not. He may have been intimately involved. I believe he probably was intimately involved in writing the new bylaws, because bylaws are not easy to write and they don't just pop out of your ass overnight the way they did. But he wasn't the person who initiated all of this. It was somebody from out of state. And I also believe that this person, I've said this before, but I like to keep connecting the dots because the light turns on for people at a different point. Remember, Gilletta said she was ready to resign. And then somebody, this out-of-state person, contacted her and said, no, there's another way, and laid out this coup plan. Joe Bishop Henchman also was going to resign way before this. He was going to resign at the June 4th, 5th meeting, but he didn't. I think he also got that phone call that there's another way. Now, that is speculation, but I think it's very, very reasonable speculation. All of a sudden, these two chairs who didn't resign that then colluded on this whole takeover thing, and then all of a sudden, then the bigotry becomes too much, and there's no fucking... Oops, I did good. There's no flipping bigotry. This is like so ridiculous. But yeah, I think that out-of-state person made 2 phone calls, because Bishop Henchman was ready to resign in June. At the beginning of June, at that LNC meeting, and he chose not to, because this other plan was already in the works. And JJ says, bylaws popping out of your ass. Speak for yourself. Well, bylaws could probably pop out of my ass too, but most people's asses are normal and healthy. And those sorts of things do not happen. Let's go over to the next clip. And as I said in the beginning of this broadcast, I couldn't keep the F-bomb, I'm still got a little bit of a cough, from popping out within the first 5 minutes. So this video is definitely not monetized, so super chats are always welcome. And for Nave, we don't know who it is yet, but I will find out. I've got weaponized autism. I will find out. It may take me a while, but I'll find out. I won't rest until I find out.
Am I to understand correctly? So it seems pretty clear to me that when he was exchanging emails with her, this would have not been using his, let's suppose, Gmail. He would have been using his Libertarian Party account, which means once the Libertarian Party is taken over, whoever is their IT person will have access to all that data, even probably if he deletes it, because the Outlook creates backups.
Oh, that might be the case, or he may have used his personal email address. The guy is a lawyer, so he may have been smart enough to.
Well, maybe I don't know that she was smart enough.
Well, it doesn't seem like she probably would have been.
So there's two of them. You're going to have 2 copies of those emails.
Nothing we didn't learn from Hillary and Hunter.
Yeah,
emails can be found.
So,
although Hillary did a pretty good job.
Or it could be Lois Lerner, and emails could be lost. And even if you have congressional subpoena, it's just like, oops, it's like, well, too bad. So, this is because another thing that happened is, she publicly said this was kind of crap and unprofessional and retaliatory and so on, and so forth. And, he was kind of making it out that she was completely unprofessional and this is all ridiculous. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when these chickens come home to roost.
Yeah.
Okay. I always have to put on guides. Sorry, I look like a football player here. Before I put on my eyeliner. The she and he there is me and Bishop Henchman, where they tried to make it out like, yes. And I will, you can't take me too seriously with these things on my eyes, but I will keep bringing up this time frame. The people who were trying to remove me were like, oh, because she's got this long history of being so terrible and impossible to work with. Is it that? Or is it the whistleblowing? Well, let me once again bring up a certain fact to you, and you'll soon have the minutes to prove it. We had an LNC meeting on June 4th and 5th, and nearly everyone who was my accusers voted for me to be interim chair of the platform committee. Either they are just terrible, terrible LNC members that voted for an absolutely atrocious person to be interim chair of the platform committee, which means they have horrible judgment. And nearly all of them voted for me to be on a brand new committee. Yet 2 weeks later, they were trying to remove me from all committees because of this long-standing indecorum. One of these things is not like the other. You either were retaliating against a whistleblower, or you were just shitty LNC members when you put me on those committees 2 weeks ago. Which is it? I know which one passes the sniff test. Oh, I forgot to put back up the comments widget, which, again, I'll make sure it comes up automatically in the future. But about the emails. We are so not ready for prime time. We use Gmail as the party's email service. Come to find out, Bishop Henchman wasn't removed immediately from his email access. You think those emails still exist? I don't. I think they've been long since deleted, if they even existed on the party email. So do I think this committee is going to find anything on the emails? No. Even if he did use his party email. And because it's Gmail, no, those copies don't exist on an Outlook server or on a party server. It's all Google, and it's all gone. I'm positive of it. back to, and we don't have subpoena power or anything like that. Can't force Gilletta to turn over anything. And Mega Web says it was great meeting you at Porkfest, and I do remember you. And you did not talk my ear off. I totally enjoyed that conversation. And then there's something in another language that I cannot understand. Fedor. It looks like Greek or Russian. Sorry, I'm typical American that's ignorant of things that aren't American. And that's not to our credit. Okay, let's continue.
And, you know, for those people there who are like, well, all these other people put in the good work and they built up the party, a lot of those good people are really happy with what we're doing because they see it. They get it. They're like, oh, yeah, this is what we need. We need like all the popular figures to bring this energy in. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm following in the tradition of Harry Brown and Ron Paul and the guys who were past nominees of the LP. Like, I'm LP, you know what I mean? So like, it's like these guys are the deviation as far as I'm concerned.
So one of the big arguments they had against you is that what you're doing is creating an environment in the Libertarian Party that's inhospitable to people with different views. And that once you come in, you're going to start purging people, which is not what the party should be about. And it's what they're going to say is devil's advocate here. It sounds pretty clear that what you're saying is, Kathy Newman, that you're not going to create purges per se, but you're going to do your darndest to create an environment where everyone of that ilk is uncomfortable. And a la Mitt Romney, your hero, they're going to self-deport from the Libertarian Party. Are they right?
Well, I mean, I learned everything I know from Mitt Romney. And if the plan was good enough for Mitt Romney, I mean, why wouldn't it be for me? Well, look, he
got us Obamacare. The guy is accomplished.
he sure did. Man, that really is true. He got us Obamacare.
Yeah.
And he was this close to landing that Secretary of State role with Donald Trump. He said the interview went great. The first interview went great. Second round, he flubbed it up a little bit, but nobody's perfect. Anyway, but you know, his dad and his 12 grandmas were proud of him.
Yeah.
But so, look, I think that the idea of making the party an inhospitable environment for some people is not a bad idea. I mean, some people like who are like, if you're more exercised by mean tweets or who had a podcast with a right winger that they're not allowed to talk to than you are about lockdowns and wars and things like that, then I don't think you serve too much use in the party. But that being said, I don't want anyone to leave. So I don't want anyone to leave. I want them to stop being awful. Like, I think we need as many people as we can get. So I'm not trying to purge anybody out of the party, but if we want to make this a force for what we want it to be, then yeah, we're going to have to be a little bit focused on those issues. So my thing is like, yeah, if you think I'm a Nazi and, you know, I'm becoming one of the major figures in the party and that makes you want to leave the party, I'm fine with that.
Okay. And I know a lot of people are going to get incensed at some of the things he said. But the fact is, the people who think they see Nazis under every corner and run pages like Faketarians, which is nothing more than a harassment page, are trying to make the party inhospitable for people. If that's the type of battle it is, they started it. But the fact is, all political parties try to make their parties inhospitable to certain views that are believed to be contrary to the ideology of the political party. That's just part of the political process, like it or not. And yeah, I think people who are in favor of getting people locked up in their houses and the complete shutdown and trampling of our civil rights, no, I don't think the party should be friendly to those kinds of people, because those are anti-freedom. And we should be inhospitable to anti-freedom. No issue with that. Now, of course, you would prefer people change their views. But if they aren't going to change their views, it's better that they figure out that we aren't all about that. See, some people take it as like some kind of personal insult when you say, you know, perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. There's nothing like wrong with that. if a group doesn't agree with your views and there's another group who does, you're not insulting their mother by saying, perhaps this isn't the right group for you. In fact, you're doing both your own group and them a favor, because kicking against the goads is painful and annoying to everyone who has to watch it. But yeah, people who are going around falsely accusing people of being Nazis and racists and bigots and all of that, yeah, I'm not going to shed a tear if they leave. Really not. Because I am tired of that slander against people. But the inhospitable environment was created by others. That is not something you could lay at the feet of the Mises Caucus. And let me just, I'm mixing up some eyeshadow here. I'm really not too sure yet what I'm doing with the colors. I usually don't plan this out very well. I think this outer lid color is a little bit too purpley. But let me just blend it all, and maybe it'll all work out. So let me start blending. And I'm going to look at comments too as well. Put on the glasses. Yeah, that's kind of muddy. Yeah, the clip is from Michael Malice's show, You're Welcome. And hello, everyone. Yeah, it really did strike me how incredibly insulting it is to call a Jewish man a Nazi, and a Jewish man who lost family members in the Holocaust. You are a despicable scumbag if you're calling Dave Smith a Nazi. I mean, that's like the absolute worst thing you can call a Jewish person who lost people in the Holocaust. I mean, come on. And you think you're righteous? I am tired of this identity politics woke bullshit. And as I said on a few interviews that I did, when it comes to like that kind of politics just in general, I think it comes with the pink hair dye. It like seeps into your skull. I've got a little bit of SJW sympathies myself. So for me to be turning against all of this, it's pretty bad. But I'm over it. See, look, blending it helped a lot. Then I'm going to put on some of the sparkle. Yeah, baby. We're going to go to the next clip here in a minute. And thank you, Dr. Funkburger, because I'm definitely not monetized in this video with all the F-bombs I've been dropping. And thank you, Joe. I've gotten so many emails and messages from people who said they were inspired to join because of the stand I took. And that just touches me like so greatly. But let's continue now.
Okay, yeah. One of the things that I don't understand is the argument is, is the Libertarian Party a vehicle for people getting elected, or is it a vehicle for promoting the correct ideas of liberty? Like the populist and progressive parties did not get much success electorally, but they got enough that the other two parties adopted their platforms. Which of those do you think is closer to your vision for the LP?
Well, okay, so there's no question that red pilling people is closer to my vision, but I think it's a false choice to put the two of them next to each other. So I think you almost have to look at this in two distinct, different fields. There are local elections, and then there are state and national elections. Right. In local elections, that's a whole different game. If anything is winnable, and somebody can actually bring some amount of real liberty to people's lives by getting elected, then that's where we should be very smart about choosing what races we support people for. But there are examples, not just in the Libertarian Party, a lot in the Republican Party, where people have gotten, elected to local positions and done really good things, like really good things, repeal gun laws and, stuff like that. Okay. And that is really, really very valuable. So anywhere we can do that, that's a good thing to do. But that's not really my focus or my expertise. Like what I'm about is like red pilling people and introducing people to these ideas. And I'm very good at, I'm very good at making people realize that the things that sound so crazy about libertarian anarchy are actually very common sense, and the things that they consider very common sense are actually very crazy. Like
Yeah.
I'm particularly good at doing that. And
Okay. I'm going to have some other clips about this. See, I like that glitter. See, this turned out actually pretty good now. I've got another clip that deals with that more fully later. So I'll do it more there. But we're starting to see now the constant battle. Is the Libertarian Party about winning elections, or is it about spreading the message? You want to know what the answer is? Yes. And tired of the mutually exclusive bickering from either side. So let's continue. And Reardon, I would encourage you to join the LP. Right now is an exciting time. We're on the precipice either of something great or completely falling apart. It's an exciting time.
But I think it's a false choice to say, like, for a libertarian presidential candidate, are we interested in introducing more people to these ideas, or are we trying to win? I mean, if you're talking about going from 1.5 million votes to what, the 50 million that we would need to win, how exactly do you get there without introducing more people to these ideas?
Yeah.
Like the truth to me, I look at it like this: like if libertarians ever get anywhere close to the number of people willing to vote for a libertarian that you'd need to win the presidency, then we've already won the country. I mean, if we had 30 million true believing libertarians in this country, we're just living in a different country. I mean, it's like, I don't even know that you'd need the political apparatus to go through the federal government at that point, which is probably not your best bet.
And that is such a good point. And I like his disjunction between local races and federal races. They serve different purposes. I'm going to be running for town council. I can win that. You're running for president, it really is going to take like a miracle of the great meteor of death level for a libertarian to just go from 0 to win. So they need to have a different goal. But the fact is, once we're at the point where a libertarian could win the presidency, we're already living in a different culture, that it won't be quite so important. As I said, politics are a lagging indicator of social change that has already taken place. And I'm going to go to some questions, and it really bummed me out that the widget's not coming up automatically. But Dr. Funkberger, what town council? Castle Rock, and that's also where I'm going to be tonight, testifying. That I'll talk about either after this or in a separate show right before I leave on some horrible things that they're trying to put on the ballot. And Reardon says he was a member years ago, but wants to see how successful the Mises Caucus will be. If McCardle wins the chair, I'll consider joining. See, that's kind of a chicken and egg thing. In order for, and I make a practice of not endorsing anyone. I might change that practice this year, but whoever your preferred chair candidate is, the way to get them to win is to join and be a delegate. If enough people are saying, well, I'm waiting to see if so-and-so wins, they won't win because they need the votes in order to win. And you refuse to do social media, Dr. Funkberger. Yeah, you're a smarter man than I am. You can get in touch with me at Pink Flame of Liberty. That's my Gmail address. And, Wayne, my husband, is now state chair. So always through the state party, you'll be learning about all these races that everyone is doing through the state party. And perhaps we need to put more of that info on the actual state webpage rather than relying on social media so much, because we do rely an awful lot on social media. But if you don't mind joining Discord, the LPCO does have a Discord channel, and I'd be more than glad to send you the link to that if you shoot me an email. Okay, next clip.
At that point, you'd have a real shot of like mass agorism, mass civil disobedience, nonviolently, stuff like that. So there's lots of different possibilities at that point. But I think our only path moving forward is to red pill more people and get more people thinking the way we think, which is very possible.
One of the things I find to be, I don't want to say baffling because these are not bright people, but stupid, maybe I'm missing something, which is certainly possible, if not likely. This argument against mean tweets, if you are going to be running kind of an insurgent campaign, if you're another party that has not ever come close to becoming electing a candidate, it would behoove you, I would think, or not you personally, anyone, to look at past kind of outsider campaigns. Jesse Ventura in Minnesota, Governor Ventura was one of them. Obviously, President Trump, Ross Perot in 92 and 96 are good examples. Perot made the debates, the first third-party candidate to do so, and be like, okay, what worked for them? And let's at least brainstorm it, because if it worked before, it's certainly possible that it's going to work again. Maybe it just worked for that person as opposed to a thesis. And they're acting as if mean tweets didn't just get Trump elected once. Now, even if you're going to argue that, okay, he got elected in bad terms, or is this really who you want to emulate? And he came in second to Hillary Clinton. If the numbers were a tenth of his success, you're looking at like 4 or 5 million. If the Libertarian Party is getting that percent of the vote, that is going to cause like real big wave changes in politics.
Oh yeah. I mean, it would be, like it's, well, I'll say it like this. I mean, because there are arguments to be made for when you're throwing the ball down the field, like when you're going for it, what's the best way to go for it? And there are ways that you can, shitpost or troll or things like that I think are less effective than others. Like you happen to be like a master at that. Some people are not as good at that. Yeah. And so you can miss the mark. But what I can't understand is the debate between that or playing it conservative. Like you don't play it conservative when you're down 7 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Like you have to go for it. That's the only chance you have. So it's not just, there are these, a lot of blue-pilled libertarians who honestly believe that you really don't want to offend the corporate press and the blue check marks, because that is death. And you can kind of understand for many years why they believe that.
Yeah, because then you're SOL. You can't get your voice out there.
When they had a monopoly on the conversation, you have to be invited into the conversation. Of course, this is the kiss of death that Hoppe wrote a lot about, is once you're trying to get invited into the conversation and invited into the parties and all this, you're going to compromise on the most important issues. It's the only way.
Okay. That was a really, really good point. You can't play it safe when you're in, and I have to keep my eyes shut because, as you saw, it kept smudging this wet eyeliner, which I am retrying some kind of magnetic eyeliner. I know, I just never give up on the magnets, but I'm trying this new magnetic eyeliner. And I have to let it dry. You have to look at outsider campaigns if you're also an outsider, and try to co-opt strategies that worked. And playing it safe does not work for outsider campaigns. And we need to be willing to look at what worked for other ones. And being so just agitated over mean tweets or edgy tweets, to me, it's just so hopelessly out of touch. And this libertarian navel-gazing that just drives me absolutely batshit. Hey, I'm doing my broadcast. It's Wayne. Are you going to shut the door? That's what everyone wants to know.
I will. In time.
So, yeah, that's, to me, that's just absolutely insane. And I think he's going to continue on this point.
This is why Hoppe left the Mount Pelerin Society and all that stuff. But so there's that issue. But if you think about it like this, right? It's Gary Johnson versus Ron Paul. And I think it's something that I don't even know if Ron Paul intellectually understood this, probably did, but on a gut level, he definitely understood that. So when Ron Paul, so I'll do Gary Johnson first. When Gary Johnson in 2016 was asked about, he went on this whole thing about ending the war on drugs and how marijuana should be legal, it's safer than alcohol, all this stuff. And then some woman asked him a question about heroin. And she was like, my child had a heroin addiction and it's a horrible drug. Are you telling me you would legalize heroin and you're just going to let heroin addicts like die? We already have so many deaths. We'll have way more if you legalize it. And he backed off and he went, maybe we shouldn't legalize heroin, but let's just focus on marijuana. Okay. So that's what everyone said. And in his mind, it's pretty obvious. It's like, this is going to be pushing it too far. I don't want to lose them. So let me at least get Pot on the conversation. I don't want to lose him here. That's his mentality. Ron Paul in 2012 was asked at the South Carolina debates.
Republican debates, not Libertarian.
Yes, South Carolina Republican audience, one of the most conservative states in the union. And he's asked, so you're saying you should legalize heroin? And Ron Paul takes the opportunity to look to the crowd and go, how many people here would do heroin tomorrow if there wasn't a law? How many people here are saying, thank God we have the government, otherwise I'm really worried I would go do heroin. I need the government to make a rule against this. And it got a big laugh out of the crowd and then an ovation. So really interesting moment. The laugh comes first, which is somewhat involuntary. Like it's so absurd that you just kind of have to laugh at it. And then they clap because they go, okay, I see his point.
Okay, I don't know whether this magnet is sticking or not. We're going to hold on to it there a second, and we'll see. It doesn't look like it's very strong. No, I'm just going to have to put glue on these puppies. Okay, and that is an excellent observation when it comes to the differences between Ron Paul and Gary Johnson. And Gary Johnson, at least 2016 Gary Johnson, I thought 2012 Gary Johnson was much better, was the perfect example of what I call a libertarian who doesn't want to taste our own wares. You cannot back off when people are asking you, I'm looking for my eyelash glue here, asking you to be consistent with your views. And yes, that would then include legalizing heroin. And you can't be scared to say it. If you're scared to say it, then you have no business being before the public representing libertarian views. And Gary Johnson utterly failed in that. However, here's where I would disagree, though, with Ron Paul. Of course, he was arguing to a Republican audience, so perhaps this was just tactical on his point. I don't think he's exactly correct that having the force of law against something or for something does not have a social effect that will cause people to act differently. I do think more people will try heroin if it was legal. I would. Just telling you, I would. Why not? I'll try almost anything once. I just don't want to go to jail. I've tried a lot of drugs in my life. That's not one I tried. I probably would if it were legal. So I don't think that is necessarily such a great argument. And the fact is, just look at something like slavery. We like to think we are so much better than the people who lived back then, particularly the people who lived in the South, but we aren't. If we lived back then, the vast majority of us, statistically speaking, would have just went along with it the way they did. Because it's what you grew up with, the law said it was fine. The force of law, either for or against, does have a tremendous social influence. So I think Ron Paul was incorrect there, but I don't think that's actually the point. The point is you should have that right. And I might be in the minority. Most people probably wouldn't. But I don't think that's such a great argument. Just saying. I'm curious what other people's thoughts on that are, and if I just shock the hell out of everybody by saying that. So I'm just taking a look over at comments. Okay, Dr. Funkberger, I will, he emailed me. I'll get you all set up. So I'm curious as to any of you out there. If certain drugs, pick one, were legal, would you try it where right now you wouldn't because it's illegal? I'm really curious if other people, like, listen, when I moved to Colorado, I tried all kinds of pot because it was legal. And I wouldn't have, if it was illegal, I wouldn't have gone through the trouble and I wouldn't have wanted to risk getting in jail. So I'm just curious. Go back to comments on that after the next clip.
Now, whether or not Ron Paul thinks about it this way, what he understood on a gut level was that it's more valuable for people to see that I will stick to my principles even when they take me into an unpopular area, because that's what inspires people. When people see out of Gary Johnson that you will give up your principles because you're afraid it takes you to an unpopular area, that's when no one's inspired. And I wish more people in the LP would get that.
What people don't appreciate in terms of signaling is if you are the candidate of a minor or fringe party or third party, whatever you want to call it, and you're trying to take on the big guys, you know, Coke and Pepsi, you have to be able to demonstrate on some level that you've got the strength to be actually be able to go up to them and punch them in the face or like take them down, right? Because it's like, so why would the third parties historically and correctly have to face is this concept of, am I wasting my vote, right? It's like, I would like to vote for this guy, it's closer to me, but it's like at the same time, what's the point? And whereas here I can ostensibly make a difference is the thinking. This was a big issue for Obama in 2008 when a lot of people, you know, wanted to have him as the nominee, but they're like, okay, this is just a kid. He's got plenty of time. Let's vote for Hillary. You know, that's the safe bet. And then when Oprah endorsed him and it became a situation where, and especially when he won Iowa, then it's like, wait a minute, there's not a waste of a vote. Like a lot of other people feel the way I do. Let me get on this bandwagon. And when that happened, Hillary Clinton was BTFO.
Oh, I won't put this on. I'll wait till the next break. Though this glue is going to dry. Maybe I will try to put it on in a minute. And sorry again for knocking the mic, but that's true. People are not inspired by milquetoast. They just are not. Let me put these on. You men have no idea what we go through for beauty. Okay, one eyelash on. Let me take a look at the comments. Okay, Collegial had a good point where I said, I've tried a lot of drugs. And he said, but weren't the other drugs illegal to you when you used them? Yes, but I was 20 years old. I'm now over 50. I was 20 years old in a thrash metal band, and I didn't have to look for them. They came to me. At this point in my life, if I wanted to try something, I wouldn't even, I'm so square, I wouldn't even know where to find a freaking drug dealer. So, yeah, they were illegal then, but when you're 20, you don't care. You think you're invincible. You don't have anything to lose. You don't think about getting arrested. And they were just given to me because it was the life situation I was in. Victoria says the law wouldn't change whether or not I try something, but ease of purchase might change what I do. Well, that's all part of the law, isn't it? And quality control. And Dr. Funkberger says with the decriminalization, God, these lashes are so long, they're interfering with my glass. I mean, these lashes with my glasses, they're like hitting the lens, so I've got to go like this. With the decriminalization of mushrooms locally, I'm less scared, but I'd probably try it if it was legal. I'm a working professional. I wouldn't be inclined to fuck my career up. Very true. And the funny thing is, in Colorado, as you know, there's plenty of jobs. Even though pot is legal, you'd still fuck your career up. So, yeah. Boudoir says, we go through the same. I don't know. I'm sure men have their own appearance pressures, which are different from women that I can't appreciate. So, you know, I'll give you that. And in a way, I'm kind of joking because I just know, like, my husband finds the beauty rituals of women so fascinating. Like, all this gear I have right here in this armoire where I do these shows is I've got so many supplies just to paint my face and curl my hair and put on wigs.
And didn't have really a way to recover other than when New Hampshire, and it was all downhill for her after that. So it's really amazing to me how it just makes no sense, because you're never going to be ostensibly more anti-racist than the Democratic Party. If that is my pet issue, which is certainly someone's prerogative as a voter, and the choice is the Libertarian Party says we're going to fight racism, and the Democratic Party says we're going to fight racism, of those two, only one has really the capacity and the demonstrated ability to change law vis-a-vis what racial issues are. Now, you and I might not agree with some of their votes and their perspectives, to put it mildly, but at the very least, if this is my main issue and that's how I think, I would want to go with the party in power as opposed to the party out of power, which is basically saying the same thing. It just doesn't make sense on a competitive level.
Yeah, well, so you're 100% right about that point, and there's also another element to it, but you kind of have to know what's going on in the culture in order to even understand this, but to also understand that there's this whole critical race theory kind of school of thought, which is really this rebranded neo-Marxism that's led to this whole woke culture that many people are sick and tired of. And when you come out and say, we can't just be not racist, we have to be anti-racist, hashtag Black Lives Matter, you are using the language, whether you realize it or not, of this movement. And a whole lot of people who are against this movement are now completely turned off, like you're dead to them now. And by the way, of the pool of people against this movement, a lot of them are against it because it's Marxist, because it's anti-liberty, and they would actually be a very good potential pool for you to be pitching your message to. So it was bad for the reason you said, and it was also bad because of what it signaled to this whole other crowd, which you're much more likely to appeal to. Like you're much more likely to appeal to somebody who's pro-freedom than somebody who's anti-racism if you're a libertarian.
Right. Or at the very least, someone who's anti the state in some broad capacity. You know.
Okay. I'm trying to get this to stick. And this is an interesting debate. And I watched this debate at PorkFest. And I used to disagree, and now I'm back in examination phase. I don't know what I think. And a little bit of my SJW tendencies will start to come out here. The question is, who do we appeal more to? Do we appeal more to those who would be inclined to use the state to enforce? They hate racism so much that they'd be willing to use the state to enforce that, or someone who's a passive racist? Now, obviously, we would find the racism abhorrent, but that's not the question I asked. Why aren't we finding the use of force just as abhorrent? So I guess the question that's being asked, and this is a difficult one for me, what should we have, what should we have? And I don't really like the should question because we're all individuals. But I think we need to grapple with, why do we find a passive racist, someone who just is racist in their head, but isn't doing anything actively to oppress people, more offensive or repulsive than someone who has all the right ideas but is actively using force? We didn't as a party used to be that way. And I have the gut reaction of being more opposed to the passive racist. But they aren't actually doing harm. It's a thought crime. Whereas someone who's using the force of the state to enforce even ideas that we might think are good is actually doing harm. And we've lost our way with the party with that, I think. I am starting slowly. I'm not sure what side I'm going to come in, but somebody raised the question the other day, and I don't like shying away from difficult questions, was it a net plus or minus for us to have in our platform, we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant? And would we be better off deleting that from the platform? I'm going to have a whole show on that one day. I know it's a risky show because then all the vegetarian types are going to be like, racist, right there. I'm like the furthest from racist you're ever going to find in your frickin' life. But I think it is a legitimate question to ask. And this was a debate at PorkFest that Archie Flowers chickened out from showing up to. Said he couldn't get there. And, on its face, that seems somewhat reasonable. Like, I'm from Colorado, and if I said I couldn't get there, well, but he's from frickin' Vermont. And PorkFest was in northern New Hampshire. Uber there, dude. Not buying that excuse from Mr. Flowers. I know William McCann says, to be young, drunk, and bulletproof again. boy, did I think I was bulletproof. And the drugs I did, woof. I'm surprised, honestly, that I had never done heroin. Probably because I didn't know it was possible to do it without a needle. I will not do any drug that requires a needle. But apparently it comes in all kinds of forms, and I did not know that when I was young and bulletproof. And Dr. Funkberger says, I have voted Libertarian every election that I've been able to, except the last one, because of the anti-racism tweet. And the thing is, again, my little bit of my SJW-ness will come out here. I didn't have a problem with that tweet, but I understand why other people did. And I think it was taken in a way that it wasn't intended, and it was taken as a personal preference. And then because it was a personal preference, and it was mixing politics with personal preferences. And I think that's where the LP is going astray. Because personally, my opinion is that I agree with that personally, but should that be a political position? So I do agree, personally, morally, as a Christian, that it's not enough simply to not be racist yourself. You should be anti-racist as a moral person. But should that be a political position? No. And that's where they went wrong. Perfectly fine to say in church, keep it out of the political campaign.
The Andy Craig letter when he resigned was really something. I mean, he listed off every little position that he's had in the Libertarian Party. And he was like, I was the head of this committee. I worked on this campaign. I volunteered for this thing. I did this. I ran for this office and got the highest percentage of anybody who's ever lost for that office. And now I'm quitting. And it was this thing of like, yeah, like you see it, like you see the kind of entitlement that this is, and this is what I was talking about when all the people were going after you, coincidentally, as your book is like blowing up. There are all these people who go through the approved channels and they do exactly what they were told to do. And they were told they get to be the guy if they do this. And then there's you, and you didn't do any of that. No, you just went right to people and started talking to them, and they really loved what you had to say. Like, that's bullshit. Who said you can do that? You know, you kind of see this thing, but it's like, yeah, man, all of that, all these steps, this is an illusion.
If you didn't see, that's just primer for my lips. Andy Craig's flounce, his goodbye cruel political party. I shouldn't laugh. It was like 10 paragraphs long, and it went back to all of his escapades from like middle school. I'm reading it going, nobody cares. Get to the point. I mean, it might as well started with, I was born on a farm, on a cold and windy day. It was ridiculous. And it just goes to the overblown ego and sense of entitlement. Now, I don't like seeing anybody leave. But Andy Craig was actively driving people out of the party and saying whole states should be disaffiliated. He wanted to disaffiliate Florida. He wanted to disaffiliate New Hampshire because they weren't, touting the correct lines. It was very much the invasion of the woke. And I don't like seeing anybody leave. But if you're pushing the woke agenda on the party, no, I'm not sorry to see you leave. Wokeism is cancer to political parties. You want to have that in your personal life? Knock yourself out. Keep it out of politics. Go to the comments again. See, yeah, Dr. Funkberger said, in retrospect, I think you're correct, but it really made me uncomfortable. And I get it. I totally get it. Fedor says, legalization of drugs destroys Ponzi schemes of involvement of new drug consumers. Ron Paul's right. He is absolutely right. And Foobadoo, I just love that name. Andy Craig's letter was crazy. It was so self-absorbed that it was pathological. He kept bragging about how much he had donated. And it was a lot. To be fair, Andy Craig has donated a lot. He was a good candidate, and he's done a lot of work. That doesn't give you ownership in this party. And it doesn't give you ownership of other people, and it doesn't give you the right to be calling other people names and driving them out when they are actual libertarians that you just might not want to have a drink with. Nobody's requiring you go to bed with these people. They don't have to be your best friends. So, yeah, and that's where we've gone wrong, because we tend to think we have to like everybody, or we can only bring into the party the people we would want to, like, have to be our roommate. No. There's going to be people whose opinions you do not like. If they are not, we need to get back to the question, are you wanting to use the force of the state? That's all political libertarianism is about. We need to get back to thin political libertarianism. You want thick libertarianism in your personal life? Knock yourself out. But this thick libertarian bullshit is killing our party.
People think this is true intuitively because it's like, if I don't offend anyone and I get people who kind of like me, then I'm going to win. But the thing is, what they don't appreciate is voting is more than having amiable thoughts about someone. Voting means I'm going to get my ass out of the house and I'm going to take action to make my vote heard. It is a lot easier to motivate people to vote if you are kind of driven or kind of out there, because that audience knows this is my one shot and this guy finally speaks for me, as opposed to when you have, like, suppose Biden versus William Weld or some situation. A lot of people would be like, yeah, I prefer Biden or Will Weld, whatever. But it's like, I don't really care. So, like, sure.
Yeah. But there's other people who really aren't prepared for that shit, who really aren't. And I went gangster with that power that I have over the Karen Ann Harlos thing. Like, I was pretty public. Like, listen, any one of you who votes to remove her for this, I'm taking names, and I promise you, your Twitter experience will be unpleasant for the rest of your life. And that may seem kind of fucked up, but that's the authority I have. You're using your real authority to try to remove someone out of vengeance for doing the right thing and making sure my people's stuff wasn't stolen. So if you're going to punish her for that, then I'm going to throw what influence I do have into this. Now, I don't think I do that when it's not warranted, but, like, for a lot of these people, it's like, yeah, if you're going around and calling good people the worst names in the book, well, then you know what? You're going to get called some names. I don't know. I think that's fair.
Okay, I got the bottom half of my lip done. What Dave said there really struck home with me, because at first it made me uncomfortable, because whether or not these people did me wrong, I'm like, oof, that's harsh. Like, I don't want their Twitter experience. He was, of course, being hyperbolic, miserable for the rest of their lives. But what he did is kind of a value that I have. Within my sphere of quote-unquote power, I will always stand up for those who are being victimized by people of greater power that I have the power to assist. And that's what I did in New Hampshire. There was a power imbalance, and I was in a position to help them. I didn't do it I didn't think I was ever going to get any credit or recognition for it. That isn't why I did it. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And Dave, coming to my defense, really, really touches my heart. He has a sphere of authority and power. And he said, now she's being victimized by people in power over her unjustly to try to remove her from a position that she worked her ass off for. And I am going to defend her from the position of power I have. That's true friendship and loyalty. I'm going to give you an experience from my past. I was cyberstalked before cyberstalking was a thing. I'm kind of like the early adopter on all the abusive shit, I think, in the world. And this dude, it was something. I'm not going to get into the whole nuts and bolts of it, but it was bad. It was like FBI involved bad. And I was pretty powerless to stop it. A friend of mine who had a website at the time that was really high, got a lot of traffic, was like, whoa, you're not going to do this to my friend. So he took his high traffic webpage, splattered this dude's picture across the front of it, and said, warning, internet predator. And before you knew it, this guy was begging me to have my friend take his picture down. Because that's what people who have positions of power do to defend people who are being victimized but powerless. And I respect that. And I am eternally grateful for Dave and Tom Woods coming to my defense and using their spheres of influence. And I only hope that I continue to use my spheres of influence to defend the powerless in certain situations. That is a core value of mine. And thank you, Joe. I was going to say, why do you hate me? Because he said, I want Karen as a presidential choice. Thank you, and why do you hate me? And Joe K, this is so cool, man. You guys are really touching my heart today. The only in real life thing in the libertarian movement I ever did was signing up at the Unconvention in Omaha 2018. Guess who signed me up? I did. Thank you. And I totally appreciate it. And Dr. Funkberger said, I first heard you. I'm part of the problem. Thought you were awesome. And I totally appreciate that. A lot of people got reached through. The funny thing is, through this really bad time, at least for me, more people have gotten excited about joining the Libertarian Party. And that's just awesome. It was worth it. I mean, it would have been worth it anyway. It would have been worth it to blow the whistle in New Hampshire and do everything I did, even if I lost everything. Because everybody can do the right thing when they know it's not going to cost them anything. But you have to be willing to do the right thing when it's going to cost you everything. At least that's my particular values. And I believe that's what I was elected for. And I would do it again. In this case, like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, showed me favor where I had the wellspring of support, and actually so much good and support has come out of this. But there's been other stands that all of us will take that will never be known. We will never get glory for it. We will never get recognized for it. And in fact, we might be spitefully used and despised for something we did that was right, but do the right thing anyway.
Unfortunately,
when we were there, what people don't appreciate is that there's so many different schools of libertarianism. And my friend once was there and met a Georgist who's a follower of Henry George, whose book, I think it was 1890, was kind of galvanized the movement, and it's been completely forgotten now. And he didn't even bother arguing with the Georgist. He's like, you're like basically this endangered species. Like, please keep your mindset because there's none of you left. Were there any members of any particular school that you found somewhat interesting?
No, I mean, from who I spoke to, it was like overwhelmingly like Mises Caucus, Rothbardians, and types like that. But it was pretty much just that. Like that was almost the only people I saw.
Okay, he's talking about Porkfest, and yeah, it was very, very ANCAP Rothbardian. But I thought it was interesting that in Michael Malice's experiences that Georgists are an endangered species. There's a lot of Georgists in the LP. I never would consider that. I mean, it's certainly a minority view, but it's for a minority view, it's still fairly popular in the LP. So I don't know. I highlighted that clip just because I thought that was strange that wasn't Michael Malice's experience. It's certainly my experience. I bet you in the audience right now, there are several Georgists. I always have Georgists in my audience, even though I'm not one myself, and I actually strongly disagree. I mean, in any libertarian audience, I think there's always several Georgists. Curious, if you're a Georgist in the audience, make yourself known. I won't pick on you. But I just thought that was interesting. And we'll go on to the next one. And I'm going to take these headphones off because I think I'm going to put on a wig. Why not? While we're doing the glam look. So I got to unplug my headphones. Hopefully it won't cause an echo. I don't think it will.
Let's start with this. I mean, I know you want to address some of the things that were said, but one of the things that Matt said was that when you debated Nick Sarwark was right about the purpose of the LP and the idea that most people know liberty and don't want it. And basically that the LP is supposed to, what you're caring about is getting votes over delivering a message. So you want to start there?
Sure. Well, I would say that a good rule of thumb is that anytime you're agreeing with Nick Sarwark, stop, take a breath, and really question whether or not you're getting this right. So what Matt said was, and by the way, I kind of appreciate that they were so shitty and kind of so insulting to me when they were on Clint's podcast, because this kind of it gives me license to take the gloves off a little bit. So it's like, okay, if we want to do it like this, like when I reached out to Matt, I was kind of like, hey dude, I thought that was a really good podcast. I disagree with a lot, but I appreciate what you were saying. And he was like kind of apologetic, like, look, I'm sorry if I've been too critical of you and this and that, but like I really appreciate what you do and you had a big influence on me. And I know I've been critical of you. And I was like, yeah, dude, be critical. Like if I'm getting something wrong and you think so, let me know. That's fine. But then they went on this other show and they're calling me all types of narcissists and predator and all this shit. So now it's like, okay, let's fucking, if we're going to do it this way, then okay, let's take the gloves off. So what he said was that Nick Sarwark was right in saying that the point of the Libertarian Party is to get votes, not to change people's minds, not to spread a message. Like, okay, bullshit, absolute bullshit. Like the idea that what Matt said was like, you're using a tool in the wrong way. Well, what the fuck does that mean? I mean, that's like saying a screwdriver is a tool for screwing in screws. And if you're trying to pry open a closet door with it, then you're using this tool in the wrong way. And it's like, okay, well, I just pried open 3 doors with it, and I'm about to pry open this 4th. So I don't care what you tell me this tool is for. It's effective in this way. And the truth is, the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people who are libertarians, including me, including you, including Cypherius or whatever his name is, including him, including just about everyone you'll talk to in this space. Oh, how did they get introduced to these ideas? How did they get converted? It was through a presidential run. A presidential run is using a political party is a great messaging tool. It's a platform to give speeches and TV appearances and radio appearances and all of this stuff. So the idea that it shouldn't be used